Hello everyone, I'm Professor Plink. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and naturalistic approach in an effort to give and explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Let's begin by giving some love to some recent super thankers. Comic Book Danny, Nathan Bedford 3443, Darren Williams 4938, Big Stanky 2037, Avid Professor Plink Enjoyer, Mr. Clark 44, James Lamica, Jacob Ravencroft 8369, Martha V 4654, Piao Octonawa, and M Bran 01. Thank you all very much for your kind support of my channel. You are the standard bearers of secularism, standing stoically in the sights of sanctimonious slapnuts, shitting in their cereal. Thank you very much for helping me to continue to do what I do. And if you like what you see in this video and would like to help out the channel, make sure to subscribe, click the bell so you'll always be notified when new content comes out. And of course, like this video, maybe pop in a comment. All that goes a long way towards pleasing the YouTube algorithm. And we must join with him, Gandalf. We must join with Algorithmo, for he will keep my channel motoring along. And together, we will rule this Middle-earth. Now, on to today's video. Today, it is back into that self-righteous cesspool that is theistic shorts and getting a heaping helping of creationist cringe. The more I sift through YouTube apologetics, the more I encounter the same old apologists making the same old arguments, ignoring the myriad of times they've been debunked and reiterating the same arguments time and again, usually without even repackaging them in new verbiage, but just repeating themselves as if they were reading from a script that never changes. And I mean, hey, I get it. When reruns of the same tired apologetics keeps Frank Turek in shrimp cocktails and polyester suits, why bother changing the formula, am I right? And maybe anyone with any kind of new theistic claim or question don't have the wherewithal to put it into some kind of long-form video essay, but instead cram it into a short, which they can probably also throw over on TikTok, and that's much easier. Plus, with the popularity of the short-form medium these days, maybe get a few more eyes on the vid as well. But the format doesn't allow for any real depth of thought or thorough explanation, so it mostly just results in some short but epic fails and facepalm-inducing buffoonery. So let's compile some of the most fun, funny, and maybe occasionally interesting tidbits and dive into another round of creationist cringe. So what's up first?
If you've been struggling with feeling God's presence in your life, this message is for you. I want to share with you a message I learned very early on in my faith journey that changed everything. I remember talking to my now husband about it, and I remember saying to him, I just feel like I'm struggling to feel God in my life. I used to pray and feel like I heard answers instantly. I just feel like he's left the building. And he turned to me and said, Olivia, faith is not a feeling. Faith is a choice. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen, which means we can have confidence in things that are unseen, God, who is unseen. See, feelings are fleeting. Faith, in the moments where God is silent, is necessary because he's growing you. Silence does not mean absence. God is just maturing you.
Faith is a choice, you say? I have to disagree with you there. Faith is synonymous with belief, and belief is most certainly not a choice. We don't choose our beliefs. You're either convinced of something and therefore believe it, or you're not convinced of something and therefore don't believe it. No matter how hard you try, I doubt that right now you could choose to believe that your car can drive across the top of the water and head straight at the lake at full speed. I bet you will remain fairly sure that you're going to be going for a swim all the way to the point when you're floating your Volvo, because you can't choose to believe something that you've not been convinced of. So then, trying to tell yourself that you have faith, trying to make the choice to have faith in something that you simply don't anymore, well, that's called self-deception. And since you quoted a Bible verse about your faith, let me quote one about self-deception. James 1:26. If anyone thinks himself to be religious, yet does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this person's religion is worthless. So if you deceive yourself into thinking you have faith, that you actually believe, but deep down you don't, your own book says your religion is worthless. And as far as the times when you don't feel God's presence, well, that's not supposed to be how it works. You say just because you don't feel God or perceive God doesn't mean he isn't there? Well, it kinda does. Because that's not supposed to be how your God does things. One more passage for you from the Bible, Matthew 7:7-8. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. So if you're seeking and not finding, like I and many other former believers did for years, that's a fairly clear indication that the Bible is wrong on that one. Or, you know what? Maybe the Bible is actually right on that one, despite all the other stuff it gets wrong. Maybe when many of us sought God and found nothing, maybe we found exactly what there was to find. Nothing. This notion of just keep the faith, keep telling yourself it's real, you'll totally feel God again if you just keep choosing to believe in the thing that you're no longer convinced of, yada yada. It all just really seems like a way of saying, sit down, shut up, don't question, and do what your religion says. It seems like the common retort to any hint of skepticism in order to nip that shit in the bud, lest people start thinking critically. Start examining evidence free of presupposing God behind every blade of grass. Or maybe start challenging the validity of the sermons of the pious who stand at the pulpit telling you what to do, how to live, and what to think every Sunday. Maybe sit in your waning faith for a while. Set it down for a bit and look at the world through non-Christian lenses for a bit. You might not be terrified by what you end up seeing. Okay, what's next?
I just don't believe in God, you know? Like, at least with science, there's factual evidence to back it up. With the Bible, I'm just supposed to follow blindly with what a guy wrote in a book thousands of years ago and just, like, believe that? No, like, I just personally don't believe, like, I will ever have a God. I mean, hey, that's what you believe. I mean, who am I to judge, you know? We all have our own different belief systems and stuff. Like, whatever works for you, you know? Yeah, see, at least you're cool about it. Because, like, a lot of people... Oh, my God, bro, you almost gave me a heart attack. Hold on, did you just say, oh, my God? I thought you didn't have one. No, wait, that doesn't count because that's a saying. Yeah, for people who believe in God, just admit it, bro. I caught you red-handed. Jesus Christ, that's not what I meant. Oh, Jesus, who? Look, bro, it's okay. Like, you don't gotta be different. Like, you could dabble on both sides. Like, it's okay to be a little bisexual when it comes to religion. Like, look, how about this compromise, right? God made the fishes and the humans, and then we evolved from it. Like, it's okay. You could deal with that. Come on, like.
Oh boy, you really got me there. Yeah, totally burned all the supposed non-believers. Yep, you just completely exposed us and proved that we really do believe, deep down, just like all the Christian apologists who claim that there's no such thing as an atheist are always saying.
Here's the thing. No one doesn't believe there's a God.
Or it's a colloquialism. Colloquialisms are characterized by wide usage of interjections and other expressive devices. It makes use of non-specific terminology and has a rapidly changing lexicon. It's common parlance. It's typical argot. Look, if you grow up in a culture where in practically every movie, television program, or just common conversation with others, they're quick to exclaim, "Oh my God," and "Jesus Christ" when they're surprised or frightened, it is natural to adopt such terms into your own lexicon when you're first learning to speak. There was recently a story about a 7-year-old boy in Mississippi who got in trouble because he exclaimed "Jesus Christ" out of frustration when he dropped his Legos on the floor. Do you really think he was crying out to his savior when he did that? Or was it a common term that he'd heard so very many times before that he adopted it into his own way of speaking without thinking about it or considering its deeper theological underpinnings? I mean, when you're shocked by something and you exclaim,
Holy shit!
Are you actually literally invoking a biblical bowel movement? A deified dookie? A sanctified shiza? Or are you just saying something that you've heard a bajillion times when someone is shocked, and thus you end up saying it too? I mean, does every son of a bitch actually invoke the male progeny of a female dog? And let's not even get into the Oedipal implications if we're being literal when we drop the dreaded MFer. Now, hey, if you want to dabble in a bit of non-believer camp while still holding on to your beliefs, that's fine. Frankly, that's how most former theists start out. One rarely turns into an atheist overnight. Even when they have lost their faith, it's common to still proclaim to have it out of fear of losing something that has been impressed upon them for their entire lives that they need to have. But for someone who's realized that they don't have a belief in God, there isn't going to be this wishy-washy, kinda sorta, half believe, half don't. Either you have an affirmative belief that there is a God, or you don't. There really isn't an in-between. If you're asked if you believe in God and your answer is, I don't know, well, frankly, that means no, you don't believe in God. Believing in something is active. It's an active process. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you believe that it doesn't exist, but you don't have a belief in it. You may be open to being convinced, but if you don't actively believe in something, then you don't believe in it. Period. So don't try to tell non-believers that they should be bisexual about religion. I mean, most religions hate bisexuals anyway. So what else we got?
There is no such thing as God. He just doesn't exist. That would be something I would say if I was an atheist. Now, atheism is actually a very foolish thing to believe in because when you become an atheist, you lose two things. The first thing you lose is any logical reason for why the universe exists, because you basically believe that something somehow came from nothing, which makes no sense. It doesn't comport with reality. And the second thing that happens is you lose any sense of an objective moral standard, any foundation for why some things are good and some things are bad, aside from your own feelings, because God himself, the creator of all things, has imposed a natural order on things, a natural ethical system that separates good from evil. So today, on April Fool's Day, don't be a fool, believe in God.
So wait, being an atheist means that you lose any logical reason for why the universe exists. Meaning that you think that being a Christian, specifically a Catholic, gives a logical reason for the universe? So you think there is logic in the idea that a disembodied mind that somehow exists outside of physical existence and also exists outside of time, yet can do things with a temporal framework like making decisions and carrying out actions, which require a temporal order of events to achieve. And this being created the whole universe out of nothing, in clear violation of the basic rules of physics, with no explanation for how this is possible other than,
well, first of all, through God, all things are possible, so jot that down.
And created a vast, expansive universe of countless galaxies, stars, and planets, only to wait 10 billion years, then create life on one single little planet in all of that vastness, then let it grow over the next 3.8 billion years, every once in a while pretty much wiping out nearly all of it in mass extinction events, until finally up and creating out of the dirt the only creatures that he truly cares about at all, and then being really, really concerned with who they consensually smash their genitals together with. That makes logical sense to you? Oh, and I almost glanced past the tired, played-out trope of theists claiming that atheists think the universe came from nothing. I almost skip past it because I'm so tired of having to deal with it. But most atheists believe in the Big Bang as the beginning of the current instantiation of our universe. And to that, ahem, the Big Bang was not the explosion of the universe out of nothing. It is the expansion of the current presentation of our universe from an initial state of high density and temperature. Nothing in Big Bang cosmology entails the universe coming from nothing. Creation out of nothing, creation ex nihilo, is a theistic belief. That is what you, as a Catholic, believe. That God created the universe out of nothing. Now, being an atheist says absolutely nothing about what you believe about the universe's origins. Being an atheist only means not believing in any god or gods. An atheist could believe in magic and the supernatural. An atheist could believe that the universe came into being in any number of ways, some crazier than the nonsensical way Christians came up with. But if you're talking about the current scientific models for the universe's formation, sorry guy, it is far more logical than the Christian view on the matter. And then the second thing that you said atheists lose is the grounding for objective morality. This is another one I get tired of responding to. Not just because it's illogical. Even if there were a God and that God wrote moral law, it would still be subjective. God would be the subject, interpreting morality according to his feelings and desires. Objective morality would have to exist absent of any thinking agent interpreting right or wrong. Objective morality would have to be above God, beyond his ability to change or affect. Meaning that if morality were truly objective, there wouldn't be an all-powerful God, creator of everything, because objective morality would be above him. And so this means that objective morality would disprove the God that you believe in. But the main reason I get tired of this notion of atheism divorces you from the notion of objective morality is because even back when I was a Catholic, I didn't believe in objective morality. Sure, I believed in God, and I believed that God set moral law, but I understood what the words objective and subjective meant. And so I understood that any God that is telling people what is right and wrong would negate the idea of objective morality. So I didn't even need to be an atheist for that one. Plus, I also had enough presence of mind to understand that everyone has different ideas about what is right and wrong, at the individual, organizational, cultural, and societal levels, and that there's never been anything close to a consensus about what is moral and what is immoral, on any level. Even among Christians themselves, where the different denominations can't agree on how to properly worship the same God that they all believe in, or whether or not it's immoral to eat meat on Fridays, or whether one should get baptized as a child or when they're older, or any of 100 other conundrums which they insist are matters of morality, and yet can't even agree with others of their same basic faith. To say that there is any moral standard that is a universal across all of humanity is laughably absurd. What ethical commonalities we do have are A, not even close to being universal, and B, more easily explained as an evolutionary adaptation to aid in social cohesion. So one more, what else is in the old cringy grab bag for today? Oh wow, a Questions for Atheists video done in the form of a short. Okay, well, let's tackle these one at a time. Just quickly though, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that not all atheists are positivists. Positivism is a philosophical system that holds that every rationally justifiable assertion can be scientifically verified or is capable of logical or mathematical proof, and that therefore rejects metaphysics and theism. Being an atheist only means not believing in any god or gods. An atheist could not believe that everything has a logical proof or can be scientifically verified. One can be an atheist and believe in metaphysics. Just no gods. But moving on to the questions. Number 1, is it right or wrong to torture innocent babies? Why? Or is there a difference between killing someone and saving someone? Why? Okay, so this is 4 questions in one, but whatever. And why are you putting the qualifier innocent in there? Is there such a thing as a guilty baby? But whatever. To the heart of the question, this is going back to the idea of objective morality that we just got done with. How can you be against torturing a baby if there's no objective morality? Well, quite easily. Subjectively. I believe that it is wrong to torture, well, anyone, but definitely babies too. And that is a subjective belief. There are plenty of people who do not hold the moral position and do commit egregious abuse on children. The fact that most people have, as part of their individual moral framework, that doing harm to babies is bad is not evidence for it being an objective moral standard. Evolutionarily, we're conditioned to care for our young as most animals are. Just as we are biologically driven to breed and reproduce to continue the species, we're driven to protect our offspring and the offspring of others of the species. We have similar protection tendencies towards older children, and even adults, because as a social and cooperative species, we thrive on the establishment of pro-social behaviors that benefit individuals other than ourselves and cause widespread success on the society as a whole, thus benefiting ourselves in the process. Same is true with killing versus saving someone. If we save our neighbor from harm, there's a better chance of that being reciprocated in them saving us one day, or in just helping us and we help them. Do that and everybody wins. Versus the idea of killing our neighbor, which, well, is going to get us sent to jail, ruin our lives. That is, if they don't manage to kill us first in self-defense. And on a greater sociological scale, a society where people are self-serving and killing each other at a whim is going to be far less successful than one where its inhabitants help each other out and save each other from danger. Trust me, you don't want to live in a society where you're constantly looking over your shoulder for the person who's likely going to stab you in the street to steal your shoes. Like, this seems so obvious. But as I often say, if the only reason you're doing good things is because you're afraid of what God will do to you if you don't, then you are not a good person. Question 2. Is there a difference between the sound of an explosion and a piece of music? What observational, natural science explains this? Well, there's quite a lot of obvious differences between the two. For one, an explosion is one noise that happens quickly and then it's over. A piece of music is going to go on for several minutes. But as to why music affects us differently than an explosion, well, music has patterns. It modulates. It moves through different tones and notes in various patterns. And it is those patterns, made by instruments whose tone our hearing is primed to find pleasurable, that our brains latch onto. See, the human brain is a pattern recognition organ as much as it is anything else. We're geared towards finding patterns in things and finding those patterns pleasurable. This goes back to, as evolutionary biologists like to point out, how when we were a fledgling species tropsing through the woods, if we were looking at a bush and could see the pattern of a leopard through the leaves, we had a better chance of surviving by seeing it early, turning and running away. We tend to like patterns. We prefer discerning order instead of chaos. And so we have a tendency to find the repetition of various instrumental patterns pleasurable, artistic, beautiful even. Also, explosions can be loud to the point of hurting our ears. And even if we aren't close enough to them for that to happen, we associate the sound with pain, or the destruction that explosions often bring, or just something bad. So we don't have the same affinity for it that we do for a piece of music that pleases our brains and gives us a nice dopamine hit as a result. Now, what do you think the difference between music and an explosion is? Why do you think we like music? Is it that music is the language of our souls or of God? If that's so, then how do you explain why so many people love the music of Kiss, which everyone knows that Kiss stands for Knights in Satan's Service? Question 3. If there is mutual consent, is it right that the orphan, no relatives or acquaintances, is in an incest relationship, provided that she does not give birth to a child? Why? Well, my first thought is, how can an orphan with no relatives have an incestuous relationship? I mean, they have no relatives. Well, romantic relationships with family was not that uncommon just a short time ago, historically speaking. According to Yanvi Ehrlich, data scientist at Columbia University, while it's taboo today, cousins used to get hitched all the time. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's wife, Eleanor, was his fifth cousin once removed. She didn't even have to change her name. And scientific geniuses like Albert Einstein and Charles Darwin married their cousins too. For much of human history, these unions weren't considered bad or gross. Oftentimes, there weren't many better options. From 1650 to 1850, a given person was, on average, fourth cousins with their spouse, according to Ehrlich's data. Many people may have married their first cousins, and many people married someone not at all related to them, he says. But within a century, that had changed. By 1950, married couples were, on average, more like seventh cousins. Now, these days, it's considered bad to get involved with relatives both for the genetic reason of offspring being more prone to birth defects, but also because of the psychological damage that can be done by crossing the relational boundaries that separate our relatives from our romantic partners. It also tends to violate social taboos that can cause a host of problems within communities. In general these days, nothing good generally comes of crossing those relational lines, and so it's a bad idea. But not because of some god who supposedly commands it. And by the way, this video comes from an Islamic channel, and all the Abrahamic religions, Islam included, believe in the global flood and the story of Noah. If all life was wiped out except those on the ark, and the only humans on the ark was Noah and his family, then who did they all breed with to repopulate the earth? Question number 4. How can a God, independent of matter, energy, time, and space, be seen? Well, for starters, Oxford, you uncultured wretch. Secondly, how can a God, independent of matter, energy, time, and space, even exist at all? Question number 5. Is it wrong for an orphan child to unalive themselves in a place and manner that no one will know about, and why? Well, again, why are we talking about an orphan? Does the child being an orphan change the situation in any meaningful way? But anyway, it depends on the context. I mean, what exactly are we talking about here? Are we talking about a 17-year-old with a terminal condition and only a few months left to live anyway, who wants to go out on their own terms with some dignity before enduring the needless suffering of their disease? Because I would be entirely on their side on that one. But if we're talking about a 10-year-old going through an emotional breakdown because of bullying or a bad home situation, and in that moment about to do something drastic? Because anyone in that kind of situation, not just a child, but adults too, are not necessarily thinking clearly. Maybe even suffering from a psychotic break and not in their rational mind. They need help, and that is what we should provide. Most people who do that drastic thing are just looking for a way out of their personal situation and don't see any other way to achieve that in that moment. But that is where we should have enough empathy for each other to help them in ways that allow for their life to get better. Again, this sort of pro-social behavior is good for the whole of society and thus has a reasonable, non-supernatural rationale behind it. No God is required to have empathy for somebody who is suffering and want to help them to make it better. Question number 6. If we have the money and status to protect ourselves, can our efforts to satisfy ourselves at any cost be considered the right thing? Can aggression be normalized in this way? Not if it comes at the expense of other people. Why? Because other people have the same rights as I do, and I wouldn't want others screwing over me so that they can get what they want. So, since I have a functioning sense of empathy, I can realize that I shouldn't screw over others to get what I want. We live in a culture that thrives on reciprocity. I help you, you help me. I don't violate your rights, you don't violate mine. But it goes beyond that too. It's not just that there are social barriers in place to prevent us from hurting each other, or incentivizes us to helping each other. Like much of what we're socialized towards, these sorts of ethics pervade our thoughts and our character. We end up internalizing these pro-social standards to the point where they become a part of our personalities, our thought processes. They become axioms that we build our entire way of thinking and behaving towards one another upon. This is textbook psychology and socialization. Again, it all comes back to empathy. You don't need religion to have morals. If you can't determine right from wrong, then you lack empathy, not religion. And question number 7. If there is no afterlife, how can one take revenge for the bad deeds done by a lonely person before unaliving themselves? How does natural science provide a satisfactory answer? Well, for starters, hell is most certainly not a satisfactory answer. Revenge itself isn't a good thing. Personally, I believe in punishment that has an ultimate positive purpose. Punishment for any wrongdoing should be either corrective or restorative, but should never be retributive. Corrective punishment is meant for rehabilitation. It should be to make the offender understand the consequences of their actions and understand that what they did was wrong, with the intention being that they're temporarily punished, and then the punishment is allowed to end, and they're allowed to rejoin society having atoned for their offense. Restorative punishment is when the offender is some way making restitution towards those they've wronged, repaying those that they've defrauded, or doing community service to repay their debt to society. These sorts of punishments have the end goal of producing more ultimate good than the harm that was originally caused. But punishment as retribution, that's punishment that has no purpose other than to cause suffering to the offender, only resulting in greater total suffering. And the idea of hell is the worst example of that possible. There is no chance of rehabilitation. There is no restoration or compensation for any wrongdoing towards anyone the offender has hurt. I mean, not unless those wronged take pleasure in the suffering of others, which is a bad thing to begin with. All the notion of hell does is exponentially multiply human suffering. And since that suffering is supposedly infinite, it infinitely compounds human suffering. Is that your goal? Is that what you really want? For human suffering to be infinite? I mean, what good does that serve? How do you justify infinite punishment for the finite offenses committed in a finite lifespan? And considering that most religions that teach an infinity in hell do not even claim it for real egregious wrongdoings, but mostly just simply for not believing in the right religion. A religion that, no matter which one it is, most humans throughout history and to this day do not belong to. Meaning that there's going to be far more people in hell than in heaven, most of which are there not out of revenge for things they did that hurt others, or any kind of actual bad deeds, but for not belonging to the correct religious club. So the eternal suffering of the human race will, on a pure numbers scale, vastly outweigh the eternal pleasures of those select few who make it past the pearly gates. And you're okay with this supposed state of affairs? Because, to me, it's easily the worst horror story I can fathom. And so that is the end of these 7 questions, and the last of our Creationist Cringe for today. We had misunderstanding faith and thinking that you can choose your beliefs. We had the utter idiocy of thinking a common expression was akin to deeply held theistic belief. A priest trotting out the stock standard misunderstandings of thinking atheists believe the universe came from nothing, and not knowing what the word objective means. Then we finish things off with another grouping of bad questions from believers who probably could figure out the answers themselves if they look past their sermons and holy books for 5 seconds. I wish I could say I was surprised by the lack of critical thinking at play here, but what would creationist shorts be if not short-sighted? So that is where we'll end things for today. So thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like this video, comment, and subscribe so you'll always be notified when a new video comes out. Till next time, I'm Professor Plink reminding you to keep striving for greater understanding. It's the best way to get wherever you want to go.